Hey, big spenders! Welcome to Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni, and today I thought we'd take a look at a classic musical from the 1960s and explore some fun behind-the-curtain trivia you may not know, or maybe you do. I don't know your life.
You don't know anything about me.
We're talking today about Sweet Charity.
Sweet Charity.
Subtitled The Story of a Girl Who Wanted to Be Loved, Sweet Charity follows the misadventures of the aptly named Charity Hope Valentine, a taxi dancer who was
Looking for love in all the wrong places.
in New York City. During the course of the musical, with a book by Neil Simon, music by Cy Coleman, and lyrics by Dorothy Fields, Charity finds herself in a lake in Central Park, literally, a seedy dance hall, an uber-swanky nightclub, the apartment of an Italian movie star, trapped in an elevator at the 92nd Street Y, a hippie church under the Manhattan Bridge, stuck on a ride at Coney Island, and back again to Central Park. It's one of my favorites. The original production was, of course, directed and choreographed by the one and only Bob Fosse. He conceived the show as a vehicle for his equally talented wife and muse, Broadway megawatt star Gwen Verdon. Sweet Charity opened at the Palace Theater on January 29, 1966. A modest hit by today's standards, it would play 608 performances, closing on July 15, 1967. A movie version in 1969, Broadway revivals in 1986 and 2005, an off-Broadway revival in 2016 starring Sutton Foster, not to mention numerous regional and high school productions, have kept this show alive in the hearts of musical lovers everywhere.
The minute you up.
But while we all know the songs and the dances, there's some great facts about this beloved show to explore, so without further ado, let's swing by the Fandango Ballroom and buy a ticket for some
Fun, last, good time.
with 10 things you may not know about the musical Sweet Charity. Number 1, it's based on a film. While so many theatergoers today bemoan the fact that so many new musicals are based on movies, this is hardly a new trend. Most of the great writers or writing teams have adapted movies for the stage, including Jerry Herman, Ahrens and Flaherty, Maury Yeston, Strauss and Adams, Kander and Ebb, Lin-Manuel Miranda, and even Stephen Sondheim. Twice.
Twice. 2 times.
Sweet Charity is based on famed Italian director Federico Fellini's Academy Award-winning 1957 film Nights of Cabiria. While many of the sequences from the film appear in the musical, there are some big differences. Besides the obvious major change of resetting the story from Rome to New York, the biggest change is Cabiria/Charity's occupation. Cabiria is a prostitute.
A hooker with a heart of gold.
This had to be softened for American audiences in 1966, so Charity works as a taxi dancer at the Fandango Ballroom. Sidebar, what the heck is a taxi dancer? In the early 20th century, men could go to dance halls and pay to dance a single dance with a woman of their choice. Hitting its stride in the 1920s, taxi dance halls were hugely popular and totally above board. Men would buy dance tickets usually for 10 cents each, thus the famous Rodgers and Hart song, 10 Cents a Dance.
Come on, big boy, 10 cents a dance.
They would give their ticket to the taxi dancer, who would usually earn about half the ticket cost. The more they danced, the more they made. By the 1960s, however, taxi dancing was not nearly as common, and it suggested, at least in Sweet Charity, that most of the women who were still taxi dancers at the time were willing to do a lot more than dance if the price is right.
Sex.
Other changes in the transition from Cabiria to Charity include omitting a scene where the heroine is hypnotized by a magician and humiliated in front of an audience, and a serious scene involving the Catholic Church became lighthearted with Charity visiting Big Daddy Brubeck's Church of the Rhythm of Life, my personal favorite number in the show.
Love babies. Love day.
It's no wonder that Fosse, seeing the film starring Fellini's wife and muse Giulietta Messina as Cabiria, would attempt to do the same with Verdon. It would be Verdon's return to the Broadway stage after a 6-year absence.
6 years?
Number 2, it was originally going to be a one-act. It was initially reported in 1964 that Fosse and Verdon were working on a new show consisting of 2 one-acts to possibly be called 2 Choruses of Melancholy Baby. I somehow can't imagine that title up on a Broadway marquee, at least not for long.
Oh, snap!
Or the other title in mind was Hearts and Flowers. Besides the Fellini adaptation, the other one act was going to be an original straight play written by Elaine May, initially titled The Larger World of Faith, and then retitled Robbers and Cops. Verdon was to play a cat burglar who robbed apartments by wearing suction cups on her hands and feet and climbing straight up the building walls. By the summer of 1965, however, it was reported that the Elaine May play had been dropped. Robert Fryer, one of the producers of the now titled Sweet Charity, gave the explanation that the Fellini piece had organically grown into a full night's entertainment, and Robbers and Cops had been dropped to pursue that instead. Elaine May, however, said that her play too closely resembled another musical in development, the short-lived Drat the Cat, about a female socialite turned cat burglar. Drat the Cat is another show I would love to break down, so if you'd like to see me break down Drat the Cat, let me know in the comments. That would be a fun one to tackle.
Break it down!
Anyway, May hoped to turn her one act into a movie one day, but that of course never came to fruition. Number 3. Book by Martin Charnin. Never mind. In 1962, when Fosse couldn't acquire the rights to Chicago from playwright Maureen Dallas Watkins, he would after her death in 1969, obviously, he was searching for another vehicle for his new wife, Gwen Verdon. It was suggested that he see Knights of Cabiria, which Fosse immediately connected with and wanted to make into a musical. Fosse wrote a 9-page outline of his proposed adaptation and took it to producers Robert Fryer and Lawrence Carr. Though Fryer and Carr weren't convinced at first, neither was Gwen Verdon for that matter, once Fosse got the idea of Charity working as a taxi dancer, everyone finally got on board. Fosse knew he needed a collaborator to help write the book, and he turned to Martin Charnin. Martin Charnin would of course go on to immense fame, having written Annie among many other shows. Charnin and Fosse turned out a 60-page first draft for their one-act musical, and then, according to Charnin, he never heard from Fosse again. On advice from his lawyer, Charnin attended opening night of Sweet Charity with a stenographer. The stenographer wrote down every word of the show as it was being said so that Charnin could compare the finished script with the original first draft. However, Charnin eventually decided against any legal action. I would love to see those comparisons.
You and me both.
Number 4. Book by Neil Simon. Please. Once it was decided to develop Sweet Charity into a full evening, Fosse wrote a draft of the new script by himself. Knowing he needed help, he begs friend and author Neil Simon to help him and sent him the script. Simon made a few notes but said he wasn't able to help him out any more than that because he was currently in Rome for the filming of his screenplay After the Fox and writing the screenplay adaptation for his play Barefoot in the Park at the same time. But after reading Simon's notes, Fosse wouldn't take no for an answer. He immediately flew out to Rome to try to convince Simon and his wife. As Fosse began to explain the show in detail, he played a recording of one of the songs for the new show called Big Spender.
Hey, big spender!
Simon and his wife were immediately hooked, and Simon agreed to write the book then and there.
Okay, I'll do it.
Number 5. Book by Bert Lewis. If you happen to look at an early piece of sheet music for Sweet Charity, you might be surprised to find that the book's author is listed as Bert Lewis. So who the heck is Bert Lewis? Well, because Neil Simon came aboard so late, in fact, rehearsals were to begin only a few weeks after Simon agreed to write the book, that early sheet music had to be printed with Bob Fosse still listed as book writer, though by pen name Bert Lewis, a play on his full name Robert Louis Fosse.
I'll be using a nom de plume.
Number 6. Sweet Charity opened at the Palace and vice versa. The Palace on Broadway and 47th Street, right in the middle of Times Square, is a legendary theater, to say the least. It was once the be-all, end-all for the vaudeville circuit. There was no greater honor than getting to play the Palace. The likes of Charlie Chaplin, Fanny Brice, the Marx Brothers, Weber and Fields, and so many other grace the stage of the Palace.
Unless you play the Palace, you might as well be dead.
Over the years, vaudeville started to die out, and as many theaters did, it began showing movies. In poor upkeep and waning interest, the Nederlanders bought the theater, renovated it, and reopened it as Broadway's newest legitimate theater with the opening of Sweet Charity in 1966.
I'm good enough to play the palace. You're not good enough to clean the palace.
Number 7, talk about a boa constrictor. During the show's pre-Broadway engagement in Philadelphia, Gwen Verdon began to complain of a sore throat. As she continued to perform, the pain got worse and worse and she started having trouble breathing. She was convinced something was stuck in her throat, and as it turns out, she was right. Verdon had in fact inhaled a feather from a prop feather boa, and it was wrapped around the star's vocal cords. Verdon continued to perform until no sound would come out, and the pain was just unbearable. She took a week off from the show and had it surgically removed.
1 week? Your Majesty, 1 week!
Number 8, check please. Late in the Broadway run of Sweet Charity, Gwen Verdon was starting to tire. So to give herself a break if need be, Verdon would sometimes cut the Act 2 ballad Where Am I Going?, a song Verdon had never liked singing in the first place. At one performance, a gentleman noticed that the song had been suddenly cut and he was not happy. He wrote a letter to Verdon complaining of the missing song, claiming that he spent hard-earned money to see her perform and he felt cheated. Verdon decided to find out how long the song took to perform and factored that against the price of a ticket. She sent the man a check for the prorated amount of money he'd lost.
That's badass. It is badass.
If anyone out there is a math whiz, I would love to know what that figure is. I don't think I could ever get close to solving a math problem like that, but if you're a math whiz, figure out that problem and I'll give you a huge shout out.
I'm right on top of that, Rose.
Number 9, a sad day indeed. The 1986 revival of Sweet Charity had won 4 Tony Awards, including Best Revival. The national tour of the revival was set to launch in Washington, D.C., starring the Donna McKechnie as Charity. After the final rehearsal, Fosse and Gwen Verdon decided to walk back to their hotel to change for opening night. Tragedy struck, however, when Fosse collapsed on the sidewalk, suffering from a heart attack. Fosse would die soon afterward at George Washington University Hospital with Gwen by his side.
Kind of a downer, that story, though.
Number 10, 7 charities for 1 revival. The last Broadway revival of Sweet Charity opened on May 4th, 2005, starring Christina Applegate. But before then, a slew of actresses would be named for the titular dance hall hostess with the mostess. First, in early 2000, it was rumored that Paula Abdul would be starring in a revival as well as choreographing the show. Can you imagine?
Hey, you know what? It is what it is.
Later, when the Weislers got involved, it was announced that Jenna Elfman of Dharma and Greg fame would star in the production, aiming for spring of 2003. Elfman backed out, however, and it was announced that Academy Award winner Marissa Tomei would make her Broadway musical debut in the lead role.
Marissa Tomei? Mm-hmm.
Sadly, the workshops had not been going well, and Tomei was told that she would not be continuing with the production. The producers announced that workshops would continue, now with Jane Krakowski, who was hot off her Tony win for the 2003 revival of 9. Things hit another roadblock, though, when Krakowski wanted rewrites and a more modern approach to Charity's characterization, and majorly clashed with the book writer Neil Simon. After another search, Christina Applegate was announced and dates were set. But things are never so easy.
Oh, brother.
The star broke a bone in her foot while performing the pre-Broadway tryout in Chicago. Her standby was well-loved Broadway actress Charlotte Dembois, and it was announced that she would open the show in the next tryout city of Boston while the producers decided how to proceed. It seemed like it might be a 1930s backstage movie come to life where the understudy was going to go on and for her big break. But this is real life, and the producers decided instead to simply close the show out of town.
Well, shit.
Injured star Christina Applegate would not hear any of it. She vowed to recover in time for opening night on Broadway, and having convinced the Weislers to proceed, she delivered. The casting rumors were not done, however. Late in the Broadway run, a wild rumor spread through the theater world that Applegate would be soon leaving and would be replaced by none other than pop icon Britney Spears.
Shut up and take my money.
And it seemed like it actually might happen when Playbill reported Spears was indeed in negotiations to join the cast and move the show to the bigger Hilton, now Lyric Theater. Talks, though, fell through, of course, and the revival closed December 31st, 2005. And that, my friends, is 10 things about the classic musical Sweet Charity that if you didn't know before, you do now.
It's great to learn.
'Cause knowledge is power.
Had you heard any of those stories before? What classic musical would you like to know some more behind the scenes trivia about? Let me know down in the comments, and I promise to reply to all of them. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this video and learned a little something. If you did, hitting that like button would be oh so helpful. Sharing this with the musical fan in your life would be incredible. And if you found this channel by the fickle finger of fate,
Tickle finger fate, tickle finger fate, tickle finger fate, tickle finger fate.
make sure to hit subscribe. Thanks for watching till the end. You guys are my favorite. This is Broadway by Ghostlight. I'm Mark Bonanni. I'll see y'all next time.